Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nadia, for joining us today. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. And I'm really looking forward to your insights and our conversation on the current conflict. So, my first question to you is that how is China really positioning itself in the current conflict, in the current Iran-Israel conflict? Is it strategic silence or is it calculated power play?
Actually, China is trying to be neutral in this conflict, especially if China has its interests in the Hormuz Strait and Bab el-Mandeb Strait, Suez Canal Strait, and this kind of injected conflict between Israel and Iran will negatively affect Chinese interests in the region. Through Chinese build and road Chinese initiative. So China is supporting now Iran to respond according to Article number 51 of the UN Charter that give Iran self-defense to defend itself in the face of Israeli military attack on Iran. On the other side, because China is the largest importer of Iranian oil, regardless of the American sanctions, American economic sanctions on Iran, but Iran is still the largest importer of the Iranian oil, and Iran is the center corner between Iran and Europe through Persian Gulf Sea. So Iran is depending intensively on Iran to defend on its own interests in the region. On the other hand, Chinese security think tanks, intelligence Chinese circle has predicted that the United States, Washington has supported Israel from the beginning, and the evidence and the indications about that before the Israeli attack on Iran, especially on Wednesday, 12 June, the United States has ordered the families of its soldiers in the American military bases in the Middle East, especially on Iraq, to remove and to back to the United States. So from this point, from this indicator, China has predicted that the United States has supported the Israeli attack. Also, the United States and President Trump denied the American involvement completely fully in this conflict between Israel and Iran. But the other indications indicated another thing that ensure the involvement of the United States in this conflict. On the other hand, as well, there are American Britain based in the central of ocean side, and there are military deployment, American military deployment before the Israeli attack on Iran, and deployment some of American B-2 bombers on the ocean. On the ocean corridor. So from this indication as well, China has predicted, and Chinese intelligence and the security and the military Chinese circles have analyzed that the United States has moved by deployment and dispatching its bombers to the ocean before the Israeli attack to Iran. So on the other hand, I will try as well to analyze this. The Iranian nuclear non-proliferation is not the exact reason that gave the Israeli right to respond or to attack Iran, but Israel is trying to avoid the attention of the international community away from Gaza Strip and what is going on, especially Netanyahu has submitted to be charged in front of the International Criminal Court, and he should be now in the prison. So Netanyahu tried to represent himself in front of his nation like a hero by his bombing to Iran and preventing Iran to use nuclear weapons against Israel. But this is not completely right because until now Iran didn't attack Israel, and the uranium that have been used to produce the nuclear bomb to Iran is not complete, is not enough, is insufficient. So all these indications ensure that the involvement of the United States, the Israeli side is trying to be away from the attention of the international community, especially Israel and especially Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has completely failed in its goals in achieving his mission, especially displacement of the Gaza population to Sinai and Jordan, West Bank of Jordan, Sinai and Egypt. And our president Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, I will talk as Egyptian academic, he has stand firmly and our Egyptian people in front of the Israeli target to displace the peoples of Gaza and move them to Sinai Peninsula. So we have completely rejected the Israeli propositions and we didn't accept the American pressures on Egypt.
So how does the ongoing Iran-Israel conflict fit into, and China's response to it, fit into the broader narrative of US and China competition in the Middle East? Could it be that China is secretly using or leveraging its position in this conflict to challenge US hegemony in Middle East?
Of course, especially in the upcoming days, there are some other secret indications that there are some Western external powers will join to Israel in its conflict with Iran, especially France, Britain, UK, and United States officially may join to Israel to attack Iran. So the circle of conflict may be enlarged in the upcoming days, and on the other hand, it's a kind of proxy wars. Proxy wars, other parties will engage in fight on behalf of the great powers, like now Tel Aviv is involving in the base of Iran on behalf of the United States. Iran is involving in this clash with Iran on behalf of China, because China and Iran are closer allies in the Middle East.
They're economic partners as well.
Yeah, of course. So this is kind of proxy wars between the great two power, United States and China. On the other hand, China will intensively depend on its allies as well, because China don't prefer to involve in direct clash between itself and the great powers and between and in front of the Western powers. Especially China has very huge economic interests with the Western side. So I can guess, and the indications that guess that the militia of Houthi supported by Iran, Hezbollah at Lebanon, Shia militants at Iraq, they will involve in this conflict in indirect way, supported by China. And on the other hand, I will remind you something very important, that China is supporting Hamas and the other Palestinian movements. China has invited Hamas, but movements and with Islamists, jihad Islamists. By the way, jihad Islamists is labeled as terrorist terrorist
organization.
movement
Yeah.
by the United States, but China didn't pay any attention to this point that she had established, labeled as terrorist movement by the United States, and invited this movement as well with the other Palestinian movements to China as to Bashir a few months ago. Hamas, Fatah, Jihad Islamists, and the other Palestinian sectors to negotiate with the Chinese side to unify their front in the face of the Israeli side and the United States. So this kind of steps make the United States and Israel and the West as well are being so angry of China. So China is trying to play with the other ally, not in direct conflict between China and the great power, especially with the United States. On the other hand, I am quite sure that Pakistan as well will support Iran very well, especially after some strange statements launched by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that we will firmly attack all the Islamist states have nuclear weapons that are not allied to Israel. He was meaning just two powers, Pakistan and Iran. So the Pakistani respond on the Israeli statement is that Pakistan will support the Pakistani ally and China as well. Especially, there are as well many huge Chinese investments at Pakistan through Pakistani-Chinese corridor, economic corridor, Chinese Gawater port at Pakistan with huge investments by China, billions of dollars. So Pakistan will sponsor China and Iran in its war, in its fight in front of Israel and the United States. So it's very complicated now because there are many different regional and international clash with each other and are using its proxy wars, pushing the other to be involved on their behalf on this conflict.
So Beijing has significant economic interests both with Iran and Israel. With Iran, it has energy, and with Israel, it has technology. So what do you think? How will China navigate this very delicate balance of interest without burning either bridge on the either side?
Of course, Iran has economic interests with China, especially in the energy power, energy side, and the oil imports to China. As I have aforementioned a few minutes ago, China is the largest importer of the Iranian oil, regardless of the American sanctions on Iran. On the other hand, Israel is dependent on China on its technology. Because China is trying to be the image of the having advanced technology in our region. And I will tell you very important thing as well. According to the Hebrew Israeli TV, we have mentioned that we should depend on China and we should depend on Chinese technology in the upcoming days to survive ourselves. So this is very important as well. We should take into consideration that China is playing balance between Israel and Iran in the region. There are as well huge Iranian investments at Israel. On the other hand, we should mention very well as two very important things as well that China is scared that India and Israel, that will be an alternative to Chinese Belt and Road Chinese initiative. So they are scared that this route may be succeed in the upcoming days. So this is the target of Israel by launching its military attack on Iran. Now they are trying to push the Indian-Israeli new trade road in the face of Chinese Belt and Road Chinese initiative. And in the face of Suez Canal as well, by creating Ben Gurion port at Israel and Haifa, Tel Aviv and Haifa, and to make logistic and maritime routes that make Israel and it's just an occupied land the largest controller in the world in maritime new trade routes, and it's not accepted as at all by the Egyptian side, by the international community. So this is the indirect reason why launching this kind of war by Hamas and the other Palestinian movements in the face of the Israeli side, because they are trying to prevent Israel to shift and transfer its Ben Gurion port to be the largest port in the world in the face of Suez Canal and the other ports in the region. On the other hand, the West and the United States are trying to involve some Arab countries like United Arab Emirates and Bahrain before to make normalization agreements with Israel for this reason, because the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia by new project, they are part of Ben Gurion new trade road led by the United States, and this project in fact has been launched during G7, Group G7 at New Delhi, India at 2023. So China is trying to clash, to stop this kind of new trade war that will negatively affect on its economic interests in the region.
So you were talking
some kind of
you were talking about the Israeli perspective right now. We have just discussed so we have just discussed that China has massive economic stakes with both Iran and Israel. So we were also mentioning about the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a very ambitious project that China is undertaking. How do you think this conflict would either threaten or reshape China's economic stakes or China's economic interest in the region, given that it partners with Iran and Israel both?
Actually, I can guess now this kind of conflict, it's a strategic conflict, economic and strategic conflict, away from any real announced, declared political announcements in front of the international community, because every part now is trying to defend on its own interests. Israel, the real goal by the Israeli side is trying to defend its interests by claiming that they are the real intention now is to dismantle the Iranian side into a small sectors region. And they would like to create new state of Kurdistan that will include Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, 4 countries. So after making this kind of Kurdistan state that will be loyal to Israel and the United States, because it will be created by their hands, it will stand in the face of China and Iran. On the other hand, they are trying to abuse the other minorities clash inside within the Iranian lands as well, like what is going at Ahwaz lands at Iran. So they are trying to match them to desperate from Iran and to create their own status, and this will make Iran will be weakened and will weaken Iran in the future. So this is the real target by Israel and the United States, is to make Iran to be divided into different small sectors by the other minorities, like Sunna sects at Ahwaz and Shia and Kurdistan on the borders of some other countries, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, of course, as well. So this is the real target, because they cannot dismantle the Iranian nuclear weapons project now, so they are trying to lay on other cards in the region.
So, as you were mentioning, that the US is bringing more partners from the Middle East, which includes Saudi Arabia, it includes UAE, it includes other countries. If this so happens that Iran also does the same and it calls out for help from from China and Russia, because they've openly said that they're willing to help Iran, what sort of a geopolitical realignment do we see in the region then, with two blocks forming? One on the US partners and the other Russia, Iran, and China.
Of course, Russia and Iran, they have a strategic partnership between Xi Jinping, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the Russian President Putin. So they are depend on each other in managing its own interests in the region. On the other hand, the United States is trying to make some kind of Abraham Accords between Israel and some other Arab, especially Gulf states. And now, after successfully make this kind of normalization between United Arab Emirates and Bahrain with Israel, now we can analyze the meeting between Ahmed al-Shara, president of Syria, with Donald Trump at Saudi Arabia after Saudi Arabia, Prince of Mohammed bin Salman has invited Ahmed al-Shara to come to sit with the President Trump. Trump has directly told Ahmed al-Shara that we would like, we inspired that Syria will make normalization agreement with Israel. So the upcoming days will witness very huge, very big surprises in the region, because the United States tried to enlarge that circle of friends to Israel by making this kind of normalization. So if this will happen, United States will impose some conditions on the Gulf states to get the American military advanced technology, especially American advanced aircraft F-35. So, like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia has asked the United States many times to export its F-35 aircraft, American aircraft, to their lands, but the United States has rejected it completely, because they are working with China, and the United States, by chance, has accused the United Arab Emirates that they are working with Huawei G5 networks, Chinese networks, that may affect on the American national security inside the Emirates lands. So this is kind of clashes, competition between the great powers, the United States and China, to gain and to enlarge the circle of friends between China and the United States. The United States is playing on normalization Abraham Accords to enlarge Abraham Accords between Israel and the other Gulf states, and China is playing on Iranian side and Eastern Shia militia in the region, like Houthi backed by Iran at Yemen, Shia militia at Iraq and Syria, and Hezbollah at Lebanon. So it's some kind of proxy war, it's some kind of balance of competition between China and the United States in the region, by pushing their allies to flash away of them.
So in 2023, we saw a conflict, or maybe something that was very similar to a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. it was happening. So China brokered the peace, and it offered rapprochement. Like in the Saudi-Iran rapprochement, it brokered peace. So do we see China playing a similar role in the Iran-Israel conflict as well, or is it limited in in this regard, in this conflict?
Of course, I think China is the only trusted partner now between the whole powers, Israel, Arab states, Gulf states, Islamic states. They are trusted. They are trusted to China to play a huge role in the upcoming days to de-escalate the conflict between Iran and Israel. Especially, I will remind you something very important as well. Before United States has watched China to play a role with its ally Iran to de-escalate that clash between Houthi militia at Yemen, Hezbollah at Lebanon, Shia militia at Iraq and Syria, in the face of the United States and Israel, especially after the Gaza war on October 7, 2023. So before, yes, of course, the United States has asked China to involve in this conflict by its friends and by its allies in the region. On the other hand, I have already written some kind of very important international article on the modern diplomacy a few months ago that, yes, there are security global security initiative launched by the Chinese President Xi Jinping, global security initiative by China and its President Xi Jinping, stated on China will involve in all conflicts and crises in the whole world, and to try to solve it and make some kind of creative solutions to live in a stable and safe international community. This is the initiative of Global Security Initiative. So China and Chinese President Xi Jinping now are trying to apply their initiative on the current Israeli-Iranian conflict. And I have already mentioned to this point in many articles on the modern diplomacy, whereas I am always writing my political analysis,
Yes.
that yes, China can involve in this conflict, and I have presented very creative solution as well, and I have presented it to China and to the international community as well, that China can open Israeli embassy at Tehran and vice versa as well.
Yeah.
Israel will open its own embassy at Tehran and to try to solve their tensions by diplomatic ways under Chinese sponsorship, especially after the success of China to make this kind of reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Yes, why not? Especially all of us are really in peace and in a safe and stable region in the Middle East.
So building on what you just said about China playing a role of a peace broker, if the Iran-Israel conflict either persists or escalates, what sort of long-term engagement are we seeing from China? Will China do a more assertive peace diplomacy, or do you think it'll protect and prioritize its economic and strategic stability?
China, there are very important statements by Chinese President Xi Jinping. He has said that we will act according to factors, and in line with our underlying of our interests. So factors and interests. So China is looking at the current Israeli-Iranian conflict that its own economic interests in the region, especially its own Chinese Belt and Road Chinese initiative, and its huge investments of projects in the Middle East, at Iran, at Gulf states, at Egypt, at Egypt as well through Suez Canal and West, specifically West-South Canal in Egypt, and we see the huge Chinese projects are working in Egypt and at Israel and at Iran as well. They are working in many bridges, many tunnels, many infrastructure and energy sector, and now they are working in some developed creative, innovative and technology. So this is a very important point. We should analyze that Chinese ongoing behavior towards the current conflict between Iran and Tel Aviv. So Tel Aviv is depending on China as well in its own interests, especially technology. So China has profiting cards, some successful cards in the face of both Iran and Israel as well. So China future will try to to present itself as to change the image of China as the peace country and lead South-South dialogue, global dialogue between South and the South, as China is the largest developing country in the world, and China has launched, by the way, its South and the South dialogue is sponsored by China. So Iran is a part of South and the South international dialogue led by China, Arab Gulf status, Islamic status. So all of these countries are working under Chinese sponsorship. We should as well mention just one month ago, Asian Gulf status China summit at Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. They have negotiated with each other through many economic and through many economic projects, and they have agreed with each other Asian countries, China, Gulf status, to make free trade zone, because it's very important to enlarge their economic interests. So China can depend on this kind of economic interests connected between Islamic states led by Malaysia and Indonesia as well, and of course Pakistan as one of the most important partners to China, and to make some facilities as well to them to solve any problems in the region. On the other hand, China has very huge investments at Tel Aviv, inside Tel Aviv. So China can make some kind of pressures in Tel Aviv by not importing some Israeli techniques, by preventing its technology to China, to Tel Aviv. So it will be a big dilemma in front of the Israeli leaders, especially. They are trying to enlarge their circle of friends, as I have mentioned a few minutes ago. They are trying to enlarge the circle of friends in the region. So in the last, especially Israeli now face many opposition, popular opposition, popular dissatisfaction inside the Israeli lands, and the Israeli people are now making some kind of pressures on their leaders to stop the war on Iran. And we can watch the international TV that Israeli citizens, Israeli people now are trying to escape from their lands to other close countries after Israel has launched its military attack on Iran. So Israel now is facing huge popular dissatisfaction in front of its nation and its people. So in the upcoming days, we will try to involve other parties, especially China, to involve in this kind of conflict between Israeli and Iran, to de-escalate and to a little bit to live in a stable and safe region.
So that brings me to the end of my questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Nadia. Is there any other insights that you'd like to share with us?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Don't
much.
forget to send me.
Absolutely. I'll send this to you, and I'm sure our audience will really love your analysis as well. Thank you so much for your time today. And as soon as it gets live, I'll definitely send it to you.
Thank you, Samin. It's my pleasure to be with you.